Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't think there would be a rematch of Bernie Sanders and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Is really interesting, though they were not in the same room, mind you. They were mentioned to each other. At least Bernie was mentioned to Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Now, we're going to get started with this interview with Bernie Sanders and Jake Tapper, basically calling for stopping the aid going to Israel or a pause. They're not calling for a permanent, stoppage. They're calling for a pause. I just want to be very clear about that. Let's start off with this discussion with Bernie Sanders, and then we are going to shift into the conversation with Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Jake Tapper, because it is apparently right after he had this interview with Bernie, he had the interview with Debbie and is basically asking her if she's going to support Bernie Sanders' position. Very interesting times, folks. The last time I remember these two having any type of a match was during the DNC fraud lawsuit. But here we are again. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here. Oh, I probably have to refresh it. Sorry, guys. The Twitter clips do this sometimes, you guys, when it's been like on chill. And I'll just get it back to the 30 seconds because there's just certain things I don't want to show. And let's dive in here.
Secretary of State Blinken today said that if the U.S. does not see changes to protect civilians in Gaza, there, quote, will be changes in our own policy, unquote. Do you believe them? I mean, I feel like we've been hearing this for a while.
Well, I think you make a good point, Jake. Look, the bottom line is we are looking at one of the worst humanitarian disasters that we have seen in a very, very long time. We're literally, at this moment, looking at hundreds of thousands of children starving to death because Israel is not allowing the humanitarian trucks into Gaza, and especially into the areas where people are in most desperate condition. To my mind, Israel should not be getting another nickel in military aid until these policies are fundamentally changed. So if, my view is no more military aid to Israel when children in Gaza are starving.
So the realities for the political realities for Netanyahu, I'll get to the political reality for Biden in a second, but the political reality for Netanyahu is his prime ministership depends on the far right-wing zealots, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, who are anti-Arab racists. He depends on them. He needs them to stay in power. He needs to appease them as Arab and Palestinian rights and lives are discarded, both in Gaza and in the West Bank and in Israel. Is there any way towards a satisfactory end to this conflict as long as the Prime Minister of Israel is trying to appease the likes of Ben-Gvir and Smotrich?
So let me break down something that he just said there, guys. Basically, he's letting you know that the United States government, remember, the U.S. government is supporting, they have been supporting and backing Netanyahu, right? It wasn't until the pressure from the outside, all of the protests that have been happening, also the confrontations that Nancy Pelosi has had, that I forget the guy's name. What's the guy's name? Shoot, it'll come back to me. Oh, Blinken, that Blinken has had, et cetera. You have to think like it's because of the pressure and the protests that have come from the people on the outside. I remember that is how you pressure politicians. It has to come from the outside, because up there in Washington, the people that are inside Congress, they're not going to be the ones to do it. They were supposed to, at least the squad was supposed to, but they did not do that. So listen to this. What he's basically telling you is that the U.S. government was supporting racist governments. Because it's not just those two gentlemen that he named that Netanyahu needs, it's also Netanyahu. And the U.S. government has been sending them those funds.
Well, the answer is no. And our job is not to worry about Netanyahu's political future. That's not our job. Our job is to make sure that American taxpayer dollars is not complicit in allowing Netanyahu's military machine to kill innocent people and to result in mass starvation. And I think what the people of Israel must understand, and I am pro-Israel, I support Israel, but...
Pause. You see what's happening here, right? So Bernie is still doing both sides. And you pay attention to what he's doing. He's calling out the racist government in Israel, but he's still going to tell you that he supports Israel. So he's still trying to have his cake and eat it too. He's still trying to play both sides. Bernie Sanders is never going to come forward and say that he condemns the state of Israel. He's never going to come forward and say that we should stop sending aid to Israel permanently. He's just calling for pause. And why are they calling for the pause now? Nancy Pelosi just signed on to this, right? We're going to go a little bit deeper into that Thursday. Because of what happened to the humanitarian aid workers. That's why Nancy Pelosi signed on to it. Not because of what's been happening to the Palestinian people. It's because what happened to those humanitarian aid workers. So once again, our government has shown you time and time again who they choose to prioritize and who they choose not to prioritize. Let's go on. Bernie trying to have it both ways.
They cannot continue to wage this immoral war against innocent people and expect taxpayers of the United States to support them. That has got to end. We've got to move to a two-state solution. The brutality in the West Bank, as you just indicated, illegal activity on the part of the settlers must end if they want support from the people of the United States. Hopefully.
Pause. So now he's calling out the settlements in the West Bank. He's calling that out, right? But he's still telling you that he supports Israel. Now, you called out the forceful removal of the Palestinian people in the West Bank. You've called out the genocide that's taking place in Gaza. You've called out the fact that Netanyahu has a racist right-wing government, but you still support them? Sounds like an abusive relationship. That's what it sounds like to me.
Hopefully, that will give support to people in Israel who understand that this right-wing extremism is bad for them and bad for their place in the world.
What do you say to people? I asked this of General Hertling in the last hour. I get asked this, and I wonder what you say. Because you are a supporter of Israel. You worked on a kibbutz when you were a younger man, and you've always been pro-Israel. That doesn't mean pro-Netanyahu. What do you say to people who say, this is not fair, it's a double standard? Hamas started this on October 7th. Hamas wants to destroy Israel. Hamas wants to kill Jews. Hamas hides behind their own people. Hamas doesn't care how many Palestinian civilians die. All of which, in my opinion, is true.
It is not true. Now, this is where Bernie Sanders should come in and push back that this did not start on October 7th. You're going to hear a little bit more about this with the Abby Martin debate, but this is where he should jump in and say that, but he won't. Listen.
What's your response when people say that?
I would agree with you. Look, Hamas is a terrible, terrible terrorist organization that started this war.
See? This is how Bernie Sanders maintains both sides. He'll say that we should pause the aid going to Israel, that the deaths need to stop. But he'll then also say that, yeah, this all started on October 7th. I agree with you. Bernie Sanders knows the history. Bernie Sanders knows what has happened to the Palestinian people. Bernie knows better. But that's not what Bernie is paid to do. So just keep that in mind. I don't like fence sitters. I don't like, there's some issues where you can just sit on the fence, right? It's like, do you want tacos tonight or do you want pizza? You can sit on the fence with an issue like that. I don't really care. I don't matter one way or the other. But you cannot sit on a fence when it comes to genocide. And that's what Bernie, he's trying to have it both ways. Let me straddle this fence. Let me call out the deaths that have happened. Let's say pause the aid we're giving to Israel. But this all started October 7th and I support Israel. And some of you will probably tell me, even when it came to the tacos or the pizza, you probably would have to make a firm decision. But you know where I'm going.
And what I have said from the beginning, Jake, Israel has a right to defend itself and go to war against Hamas. That's what I believe. I think most people believe. But you do not have a right to damage or destroy 70% of the housing units in Gaza. You don't.
Pause. So again, It's always that Israel has a right to defend itself. It's never that the Palestinian people have a right or Gaza has a right to defend theirself. Did Gaza have a right to defend theirself when Israel comes in every other couple of months and they decide to mow the lawn? Do they have the right to defend themselves? Gaza doesn't have a military. There's a reason why a group like Hamas is formed in the first damn place. This is what happens when you try to occupy people. This is what happens when you oppress people. And again, they did not have a military. They were not allowing the Palestinian people to have full rights. They were not treating the Palestinian people as human beings. So what do you expect to happen? Bride Biscuit says, screw tacos. I told you I knew some of you would actually have a firm position on the taco or pizza.
Have a right to displace 80% of the population, throw them out of their homes, put them into this area, put them into that area, deny them food, water, medical supplies, and fuel. That you don't have a right to do. So the answer is, of course, Hamas began this war. They are a terrorist organization. But
they've been removing people from their homes in the West Bank far before October 7th, and you still supported Israel. You know, you can't say, see, that's another thing I want to be very clear about, people. You cannot sit here, Bernie Sanders. You got to be careful, because I don't want people to have this perception that the forceful removal of the Palestinian people that's happening in the West Bank right now started on October 7th. That was happening prior to October 7th. So I want to be very clear about that.
The United States is not funding Hamas. We are funding Israel. And what has got to be made clear to Israel, you can go to war against Hamas, but you cannot continue these horrific actions, which are causing literally the worst humanitarian disaster that we have seen in a very long time.
What do you say to people who say the reason that so many innocent people are dying in Gaza is because Hamas embeds with the Palestinian people? They build tunnels under their homes. They hide under people. They want all the civilian death toll. They consider them martyrs, and it makes Israel look bad.
I think that is perhaps a part of the problem, but it's not the real problem. The real problem right now is we are looking, as I mentioned a moment ago, a massive starvation. That is not caused by Hamas. That is simply caused by Israel not allowing the hundreds and hundreds of trucks that are lined up at the border to get in and go to the areas that it is needed. That is Israel's responsibility, not Hamas's.
I know you want to talk about your bill lowering prescription drug.
1 second there. The part that he just talked about in reference to the food and them hiding among the people, right? If this entire time they were hiding with the people, we've heard they're in the tunnels. We've heard they're in the hospitals. We heard they use the people as shields. We've heard they're right in there with the people. But all these people that Israel has killed, you mean to tell me they haven't been able to still capture Hamas? If you know they're in the tunnels, if you know that they're with the people, but yet you haven't been able to capture any of them, because the goal really wasn't for them to capture Hamas. The goal was for them to get rid of the Palestinian people altogether. I think we'll finish with this part here.
But before I do, quick last question on Biden in the Middle East. What does Biden need to do in order to make this right politically in the United States for all the progressives and Arab Americans and Muslim Americans and others who don't approve?
To me, Jake, this is not a progressive issue, an Arab American issue. It's a moral issue. Our taxpayer dollars are funding a military which is creating a situation where there is mass suffering. I don't think the American people feel good about it. In fact, the last poll that I have seen is, I believe, 52% of the American people, as opposed to 39%, want to end military aid to Israel. And that number is growing and growing. So I think from a moral position and from a political position, President Biden, needless to say, wants to win this election. I want him to win this election. But it is very hard to go out. And again, it's not just the Arab Americans, it's the young people, it's the people in general who are seeing these terrible things on the TV screen. They do not want Biden to continue to do that. I think he's got to tell Netanyahu, sorry, no more money from American taxpayers.
So,
have a nice day.
No more money from American taxpayers, but I think that should be permanent. I just think that, actually they're federal dollars anyway, but I just think that that should be a permanent position, not just no money. We're going to pause this right now, and then we're going to decide to give you money again. No, we shouldn't be funding them at all. We're not even funding people in this country the way that we should. We should not fund them at all. I don't care what happens after this. All aid to Israel should end immediately to any country. Massachusetts gives $125 million to Israel every year, but we got homeless people out on the street. Boston, the city of Boston gives $10 million, but we got homeless people out on the street. We got people that have housing inequality. We have people that can't pay their damn medical bills because the medical bills are so damn high. But you can't house people. You can't build housing here, but you got money to send to Israel. All aid should stop for going to Israel immediately from everyone. Period. They don't deserve it. We will take care of Americans. We'll take care of our people. Now, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she actually had to respond because Jake Tapper actually decided to, I guess, after that interview, lead into this discussion with Debbie Wasserman Schultz to see if she actually agrees with the position that Bernie Sanders has about pausing the aid to Israel. Let's listen to Top Ramen.
So I'm interpreting that as a no. You don't agree that Israel should not get any more military aid until they change their policies, as Senator Sanders suggested. He said the Congress is. Well, let me just. Oh, okay. You're saying they did change their policies, but their overall policies in Gaza, they've changed that.
Well, when President Biden spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu, after that very difficult conversation, Israel opened up the Erez crossing and ensured another access point, is stepping up humanitarian aid to make sure.
Pause. So she's saying that Israel has changed their policies in Gaza. They were calling for them not to have the ground invasion. The U.S. government has said that to Netanyahu. He's had these conversations with Netanyahu, and Netanyahu has said he is going to do a ground invasion regardless of what the U.S. government says. And now you get this hearing, this information that was released from the UN earlier today, where the UN is now saying there's no evidence that a genocide is taking place in Gaza. Remember, we've heard this before. We heard this about Rwanda. Initially, they denied that there was a genocide taking place. Had to come back and eat the words on that. This is not the first time. It was just a couple of years ago that the U.S. government finally acknowledged the Armenian genocide. That was recent. The acknowledgement was recent. So we're not known for necessarily getting it right on this particular issue. So you see the Zionists now got a hold of the UN. They got some people in there running some things, and very powerful organization of people, to the point where the UN can't even stand up because they're afraid. And I say to the UN, if you're not going to do your job, just step down, go. Because at this point, I question, what is the point of the UN at this point? Cowards.
Sure that more gets in, had that investigation, and had there be accountability and consequences as a result. And that's what needs to happen. More aid gets in. That's what we as a delegation communicated with the Prime Minister last week. But we also have to make sure that a deal is reached, that Hamas accept the deal on the table. It's a 10-to-1 ratio of Palestinian prisoners who are terrorists that killed Israelis to every one hostage. That deal needs.
Pay attention again. So notice how she describes the Palestinian people. Listen to this. You see? So Debbie's a Zionist too. Okay? Listen to how she describes the Palestinian people.
To make sure that more gets in, had that investigation, and had there be accountability and consequences as a result. And that's what needs to happen. More aid gets in. That's what we as a delegation communicated with the Prime Minister last week. But we also have to make sure that a deal is reached, that Hamas accept the deal on the table. It's a 10-to-1 ratio of Palestinian prisoners who are terrorists that killed Israelis to every one hostage. That deal needs to be accepted so that there can be a ceasefire for 6 weeks, and ensure that we can get the hostages out, get humanitarian aid in. The ball is in Hamas's court right now.
So you hear this? So the point that he made at the beginning, notice how she refers to the Palestinian prisoners as terrorists, right? Notice how she can label them. The people doing all the terrorizing has been the state of Israel. They're the ones doing all the terrorizing. Anywho, what he was asking her at the very beginning is, do you agree with Senator Sanders' statement that the aid to Israel needs to be paused in the event they're not changing these policies? So instead of answering that question, she basically said they have changed their policies. So Debbie, of course, is not going to agree with pausing any type of aid for Israel. Now, let me tell you something, folks, because the Biden administration has something to answer for. They got something to answer for. Because you see, they have been heavily counting on the Black vote for years. Democratic Party has. And the Biden administration, they really believe that they can go to historically Black colleges in this country, just like they did in 2020. And they can just walk in and say, you got to support me. Otherwise, you're going to end up with Donald Trump. But even when it comes to this issue with Gaza, I think they got a surprise. So let me show you what happened recently. This is interesting here. I don't think they were expecting this, but listen to this. It says, arrived in Atlanta to meet Spelman College brilliant students and educators on foreign policy priorities and representing the United States around the world. So Spelman is a HBCU, all female college. And so apparently this happened at the Atlanta University Center. Students, faculty, and alum condemned the Biden administration for complicity in Gaza. They weren't ready. They weren't ready. Watch this.
Do you support an end to the genocide? Entire bloodlines wiped off the face of the earth, never to return again. Those are Palestinian lives and generations gone because of your administration that you work for. Shame.
This is your legacy. This is your legacy.
Will you call for your boss, Butcher Biden, to stop arming Israel? There's no discussion. It's a yes or no. Will you help put an end to the genocide?
She put the mic down. She put the mic down. She don't know what to say. She wasn't ready. They weren't ready. They were not expecting that. So she just put it down and they called Butcher Biden. You see, when they went to the HBCUs in 2020, this didn't happen because we didn't have this war in Gaza. And I think some people still weren't aware of how the Palestinian people were being treated. Things have changed now. She don't know what to do. She put the mic down.
Is this as a genocide or a conflict? I just want to know.
Because according to international law, there is a correct answer.
Disgusting.
Nobody should be sitting on stage with her while she's promoting genocide. She lacks moral courage. None of us here lack moral courage. You spoke about the involvement of the Israel lobby in the U.S. politics, and now you're a part of it.
How do you feel gaslighting Black students?
Ouch. They said, how do you feel gaslighting Black students? You guys see, they weren't ready.
Simply, just how do you feel gaslighting Black students?
And these are not just students. You have alums in the audience too watching you all. We call on all historically Black college campuses to not allow us to be used. Even if our own professors want us to be used, we will not be complicit in genocide. The answer is simple.
Oh, I don't think they were expecting that. So everybody heard the call, right? Everyone at HBCUs, do not allow the Biden administration, the Democratic Party, to use you to get your vote. You don't owe this man anything. You damn sure don't owe him your vote. You don't owe him a re-election. And Thursday, we're going to talk about the student loan proposal that he just introduced, that he's trying to get passed because he's trying to cancel more student debt. You see, he's trying to find a way to win over those young voters that he got in 2020 because everybody pissed at this mofo because of the genocide. So now we're going to talk about it Thursday because I want to dive into the bill a little bit more and read this very carefully. But I'm telling you, you done lost the young base, brud.
As a Black woman that is walking the same hallways that Alice Walker has walked, I cannot genocide. Shame on you. Both of you, you're disgusting for even hosting her. Shame on you for allowing black folks to get out of college that was created for our safety.
Calling security on your black students, huh?
Shame!
Shame!
Lost. Shame on you.
Were you on stage whispering about how you think hospitals are military targets? Or were you just kikiing because you don't care about human lives?
Palestinians deserve better, black people deserve better, and Spelman needs to do better. My sisters, do not let them make a fool.
Guys, yeah, the kids are all right, right? The kids are all right. The kids are pretty base, man. Pretty base. I hear you, Dwayne. This is base. Yeah, they think they can just walk into these universities, pull the same old, ploy that they did in 2020. People are not, they weren't ready. See, they thought, oh, we're going into the black college. The black college students aren't paying attention to what's happening in Gaza. Wrong. Wrong. We'll just show up there and just tell them how we can't get Trump again. Oh, it's not working out. Not working out. And she couldn't say anything. Nothing.